Hello, I'm Andrew Wrigley, and this is our third segment on how to make a shoe by hand. In this segment, we'll cover broguing and dyeing the leather in preparation for the next step of closing the upper. We'll be using a leather punch and alcohol-based dyes to dye the English kip leather and come up with some nice results, and also demonstrate how to make a medallion pattern on the toe. So let's get started. Our project shoe is a cap-toe semi-brogue. Alright, well, we're going to be doing what's known as broguing. If you remember from our pattern, we drew the broguing along the edges just to kind of get a sense of the design, of the finished design. And basically there'll be one large circle with two small dots, and the finished result will accent the seams very nicely and show off all the handwork. Now, at one point in time, originally broguing performed a practical function, and that was to let the water out of your shoes when walking on marshy, soft ground. So it has since become a decorative tradition, but you'll sometimes see gilly brogues, which are made to look more ancient and traditional, that have brogue holes that go all the way through the shoe, and probably do provide a little extra ventilation for the foot. But this is purely decorative and makes a very nice effect for the shoe. And also, we'll be going over how to make a medallion pattern, and if you recall, we made a design on our pattern and transferred the large holes onto this, and we'll be setting that over to give us a key of where to start. So, and then we'll cover dyeing the leather too. So, let's begin. We'll be using a regular punch that can be obtained from the links that I give at the end, which will make a 1/8 inch hole, which is just large enough for the broguing pattern and can also be used for the lace holes. So you shouldn't just start anywhere. You should make your first hole in one of the corners so that you can get a sense of how to space the holes out and you don't run out of room. And you should also be sure to leave yourself enough space to do the stitching. Don't put it too close to the edge or you won't have room for the stitching. You probably need more room than you think you do. Alright, so I've started making my holes, and I'm going to go finish them moving down here. And I will be making the two little holes with this scratch-all in between. There are beautiful Italian broguing sets where the holes are preset to the correct proportion, but to be honest with you, they're impossible to find unless you take a trip to Italy and go shopping there. So we're going to be making our large hole with 1/8 inch Osborne punch and our two small holes with a scratch-all. So I'll finish this up and proceed onward to the next step. The large holes will be made with this Osborne punch, 1/8 inch. It has a clearing hole to allow the leather chads to push their way through as you go. And there's a look at our medallion pattern and a sketch on our pattern to show what it will look like. So there'll be two large followed by two small holes placed in between with this scratch-all. And it's very important to put a heavy piece of leather behind your calf skin when you're punching, otherwise it won't work. You can use a scrap of your soling strip or a piece of heavy shoulder for that, so you can save some of your scraps to use as a backstop. So I'm going to continue on with this and keep punching out the brogue holes and then show you the next step. All right, as you can see, I've finished the broguing. I made the large holes and the small holes. This is what it looks like. And if you'll notice, I have not done the medallion pattern yet, and there's a reason why. We're going to dye the leather first and then let the dye dry and then punch the medallion. If you dye the leather with all those little holes there, it makes the dye soak in a manner that is not desirable. It sort of gets extra dark around the holes and just doesn't look as nice. So we're going to dye this first and then punch the medallion holes. Alright, so this is Fiebing's alcohol-based dye. They make about 10 different colors, everything that you want basically, maybe even more. And you use this little lamb's wool dauber, and you know, you can apply the dye several coats evenly, and it makes a wonderful color, and it has that hand-done look. One of the advantages of dyeing your own leather is you get to have more selection of what type of leather to use, because you're buying it with no color. And then you get to choose exactly the color you want. You can mix these dyes together to make very specific tones. And I think that hand-dyed leather looks more beautiful. It isn't perfect. It has little degrees of variation that the factory tanned leather, dyed leather, doesn't seem to have. It's not perfect, in other words, and I like that. Subtle tones, and I like to think of it like the beautiful finish on a violin when it's done. Then you wax it up and apply the layers of clear wax to a beautiful dye color. It gets a warmth to it. So I'm just hitting this with a coating of this dye. It's very easy. Be sure to dye the edges also. Alright, well, now it's time to make our medallion pattern. There are many different beautiful medallion patterns, and you can look for inspiration in some of the older shoemaking houses, and I recommend this before trying to make your own, because it's good to get a feel for what a medallion pattern should look like. And like I said before, we've made our 4 keyholes on the pattern so we know where to start. So you make dots, which will be where the large holes go, and then that'll give you a guideline of where to put the small holes. So, show you. Always put leather behind when you're punching. Symmetry is very important in making your medallion pattern, and I recommend making the initial landmark holes in relation to the large holes first as much as possible, so that you have a target to aim for when you're fashioning your arabesques to complete the pattern. So of course you should draw on paper and then make a dot matrix on paper and practice it so you have an idea, and then keep that nearby while you're working. So I'm going to punch this out and then show you the result. So here is the finished medallion. After making a few landmark holes, I was able to do the rest freehand. And I even did a second one, and I'll choose which one I like best. But if you've ever studied calligraphy, it will come in handy for doing punch work, because you'll have more of a feel for the proportions. But a couple things that'll help you do it. Like I mentioned, you do the first holes to key in the design, the large holes, and then you can make a few landmark holes along the way to give you a sense of where you're headed with. The brogue holes will look nice. They'll catch the light and add to the effect of the semi-brogue. So I hope this has been of some help to you, and this has been Andrew Wrigley. Keep clicking and skiving.